If you're a general contractor, a subcontractor, or an owner, you want your jobs to be on time and on budget. And that means working with Autodesk Construction Cloud, software that lets your team design, plan, build, and operate from office to field. It means getting end-to-end solutions, seeing project data in real time, and preventing problems before they happen. Trusted on over 2 million construction jobs around the world. Build with Autodesk Construction Cloud. Try it free today at construction.autodesk.com.
10, 9, 8. Ignition sequence has started. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
You have entered Untold Radio AM. And now broadcasting from a secret location, your hosts, Joel Sturgis and Doug Hajicek. And welcome to this edition of Untold Radio AM. I'm your host, Joel Sturgis. Right along with me is Mr. Doug Hajicek. Merry Christmas, Doug! Come on.
Hey, Merry Christmas. Did you find any weird creatures living in your Christmas tree?
No. I have a cat. I have a dog. I have 2 dogs.
You didn't find a raccoon or a red squirrel?
No. See, we put up the same Christmas tree every year. It's one of the fakies.
Artificial.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, it's apparently safer because today I was reading about all these terrifying things and creatures people keep finding in their
dude. In the past, I have had trees, real ones, that have had critters in them. Yes. I have gone through the plague of the ants because there were ants that were hibernating in the tree I was unaware of. And once it got warm enough for a couple days.
Yeah, you're right.
They woke up.
Who would have thought some ants hibernate in trees?
Right. And then there's a few other times I've had critters. One time it was the Beatles, not the singing group in the 60s, the wonderful Beatles. It was actual beetles. And that was horrible. So I said, enough of this crap. We're just going to get a fake tree and be done. Well, enough.
Okay.
Enough.
I have a fake tree too, but, people still, and I still would enjoy the smell, that really cool aroma that you get from a real tree. Yeah. But I was reading today, people have found poisonous snakes.
Oh, yeah.
Copperheads, to all sorts of bizarre things. Mice, owls.
Squirrels.
Could you imagine having an owl?
Oh, screw that noise. I don't want no. I want nothing to do with an owl. Those things have talons on them.
And there's spiders, squirrels, cats.
Yep.
People have actually brought Christmas trees in, and they have a cat living in them.
Oh, sure. I would imagine. Yeah. The only cat that's living in my tree is the cat we already owned that loves to lay under the tree to antagonize our German Shepherd.
Oh, jeez.
So he'll go under there and he'll stare at the German Shepherd. Duke is his name.
Well,
and just stare at him.
Well, think about us. We don't have a lot of exotic animals in Minnesota. No. But could you imagine if you lived in like Australia? Where somebody, apparently the McCormick family in South Australia, returned home one evening in early December, and they found a koala bear or koala living
Hell no.
in a tree.
They'll kill you really quick, koalas. People think they're all cuddly and stuff. BS. They will kill you.
In fact, it brings me to a funny story. When I would look for if I was doing like a MonsterQuest episode or Mysterious Encounters, and I needed Bigfoot growls, and I would use koala bear.
Oh man, they're vicious critters.
Yeah, because they
really
do this.
are.
And they breathe in and out, and they just really.
Yup. I have heard from people that live in that area and that are zoologists that koala bears are nothing to mess with.
No.
That they will mess you up.
Huge claws.
Yep. That and sloths. When they get mad, those hook claws
Yeah.
Don't kid yourself.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah, slow motion cut, wouldn't it?
It would be the slow motion cut. Hey, who's our guest tonight, by the way?
Bruce Maccabee, the legendary Bruce Maccabee, who I've been watching on TV since the 70s.
Since you were a kid.
Well, yeah, I was a kid then.
Yeah.
And Bruce is, I mean, he's got to be one of the first UFO, scientific UFO researchers in the country.
Wow.
Has to be.
That is very cool. So he'll be at the bottom of the hour.
Yes.
Hang out for that one.
Yes.
We're going to talk UFOs and high strangeness with Mr. Maccabee.
Yes. So let's do some. There was a lot of weird news today.
Well, what do you got going on? You said you're dying a death of 1,000 paper cuts.
Well, I've just been taking millions of little, responding to little notes, and I'll bet you I handled over 100 different.
I love you, Doug. Yeah, that kind of thing.
Not that stuff, but just like little questions and little things and correspondence about books and pictures and books and TV shows and all these things are going on. It's really been a busy day, but it's been one of those days where you just get little razors, little tiny cuts.
Things that take your time away from what you're doing.
Yeah.
To answer it, little answers, like, just little things.
Little.
Yeah. No. I hear you. I worked today, so I was okay with that. I was at work. So, that was fun.
Other than that, it's been, just a normal day. I did discover a really cool, I want to share this because these are the best suckers I've ever had. Because we're talking about Christmas, right? There's candy laying everywhere. Cookies, candy. Oh my God. Yvette's there must be 5 tins of every kind of cookie. And then, of course, she gets gifts of cookies and they go out there. And she doesn't eat any of that stuff. Mm-hmm. None of it. It all goes to me. Well, but I found these suckers. I think they're made in Mexico. And I think because they're made in Mexico, they use real sugar. Because in Mexico, they don't have to pay the embargo on importing sugar.
That's true.
Okay.
That is
so
true.
They don't use corn syrup like we do. So they could have corn syrup. But anyhow, they're like the chupacabra. They're the chupa suckers. And oh my God, they're like so creamy and so good. I swear to God, I had to bring.
They melt in your mouth.
I had to bring 2 into the studio with me.
You're going to eat them while we talk.
You hear any licking or crunching? That's me sucking on a chupa pop.
Man.
See, let me try to read this. It's a chupa chup. Whatever the hell.
There you go.
Chupa chup sucker. They are so good. Oh my God, they're the best things. Best candy I've ever had.
Really?
Yep.
Wow. I've had some good candy. Lately, I've had some really good candy.
Yeah, I think they were bought on Amazon.
Some of the good stuff.
Yep. Chupa chups. Whatever the hell that means.
Well, there you go.
So that's the only exciting thing.
Well, that's fun.
Although we did have, I'm working on with some guys in England. We're working on a series and a documentary called the Britain's Big Cat Mysteries.
Yeah.
And a television network actually reached out to Tim, which was interesting because we didn't really reach out to them. They reached out to us.
Oh,
and
very
so that
cool.
was that was exciting today.
That is exciting.
What else? I don't know. That was reading the news, and there was normally you got to kind of once in a while, actually look for weird news. Mm-hmm. But today that wasn't the case.
It just came to you.
It just came. No, it's just right there in the headlines.
Right there.
So they discovered did you see this? They have this fossil they discovered of a millipede the size of a car.
I heard something like that on the radio. I was listening to my local radio station, and I was in the car, and I think I was coming back from a sales call or whatever, and I caught part of it. They found a millipede That's just giant. Where they? What country did they find this thing?
100 pounds. Hey, dude, you're asking the wrong guy because you know me. I just skim.
Yeah.
I skim through the news like pudding. I like. Look, my news. The news. If I read anybody, is for people that have attention deficit.
Gotcha.
It's perfect for those people because, hell, if you want to go read this giant article, go read it. That's enough for me. I'm just reading scientists reveal discovery of a giant millipede. I'm done. It's as big
as... it was a giant millipede fossil.
Yes, but it lived.
Is what it was. It did live at one time.
Bug, Joel.
Yeah, but that was... Okay, here we go. A team... Okay, would you like me to read a little bit?
No, I don't, because then I go into my attention deficit mode, and I start shuffling my feet.
You do. You really do.
Sucking on my chupa.
Yeah, and you could care less. You're like, whatever. I'm past
there's too many other interesting little bits. See, okay, here's my theory, Joe. If you just read the whole article, then you're only going to know about that, and it's going to be time for bed. But my theory is to read a little bit of everything. Got it? That way, when you die, you know.
No, but you don't truly know the whole story, though. I mean, I get where you're coming from, and I understand it.
If I would have, let me explain. If I would have read the entire article about people finding weird crap in their trees, right? Which was probably like 5 pages, and there were like 2 videos. And I'm like, I could have wasted 2 hours on just that one. But no, 2 minutes, I'm done. And then I go on and I say, oh my God, giant bug. And I'm like, hey, let's just read that.
When you go out sometimes, do you ever go squirrel and you chase it or butterfly and then you're off? Yeah.
I probably was some kind of some dopey dog when I was, in another life.
Yeah. So
what I was.
So what you're saying is things do not hold your attention.
No, what I'm saying, Joel, it's quantity versus quality.
I get it. I'm just confused by it.
It's just the way I roll.
Yeah.
I'm trying to make our audience roll that way. And then, of course, I'm battling Joel, who's like, you probably read the whole frickin' article.
I would sit down and read the whole article because I find that interesting. Because, see, I need to know. See, I just can't sit there and go, oh, that's an interesting headline, and move on with my life. I need to know the whole story.
Okay, for instance, another really interesting discovery was made, just super interesting.
And you wouldn't know anything about it because you read the headline.
And I would have been reading that damn giant bug article, but no, I had time to find out they had recently discovered a perfectly preserved dinosaur embryo that was preparing to hatch from an egg, just like a chicken. In fact, the damn thing looks like a chicken. 70 million years old. Toothless theropod dinosaur. They named it Baby Ying Liang. And to me, it just looks like a turkey. And once I saw that, I'm out of there.
Once you've had your fill, you've had your fill, is what you're saying.
I'm done. Okay, now I know that they found an embryo. Good. And that'll just go in the back of my brain. And if I ever need to do some show on dinosaurs, which I'm really interested in dinosaurs, I'll get back to that because I'll just remember that one fact, see?
Yeah.
I won't be able to get the word yin-a-lang out of my brain.
All right. I understand. I guess, where I'm a little bit opposite, like when I find a story I'm interested in, I'll make time to read it, and you can consume, if you're really quick, several articles. Not a problem.
Yeah, you can speed read, but then your hard drive, your brain, your hard drive just kicks them out. Just bam. Just kicks them out when you don't need it anymore. And for me, mine's like a whole bunch of little index cards, only with the headline on them.
Gotcha.
No content on the index card.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's a very compelling and rich story right there.
Have you been seeing all these metaverse commercials? For Meta, to change Facebook to Meta.
Yes, I have. Yep.
Like,
in fact, it already is changed.
But I'm like, what the hell is that? So I've decided to read a little bit,
Whoa, hold
a little
on
bit, not too much.
I was to say, you went further than the headline.
Just barely, like a paragraph in. So here's the paragraph I read.
Okay.
Elon Musk pokes fun at the metaverse, trashing the idea that anybody wants to strap a screen on their face for the entire day. And I'm like, hell yeah, you go, Elon.
Right.
And that's all I need. That's all I need to know. And I'm thinking, okay, what are they going to try to do? They're going to try to make you go to church, try to go to this, go to Amazon and shop in this metaverse.
Yeah.
Well,
it's been long known that Elon Musk and the founder, Mark Zuckerberg, they don't necessarily like each other.
Well, no, they're competing for the richest man spot.
So, and everyone knows that's already you. Because you have friends like me.
I love and I embrace, virtual reality and all those things, but I embrace it not through goggles. The things I've worked on are things, with the augmented holographs that I've worked on. That's so you don't have to wear the damn goggles.
Yeah.
And you don't really. That's what I don't get. Who the hell wants to walk around with some kind of googly glass or some goggles?
It's already bad enough if you have to wear eyeglasses.
But even going home and putting that crap on, I just think, nah.
Yeah.
There's ways to do it without that.
There has to be ways to do it without it.
We're going to have a lot of accidental deaths based on people. People are going to wear them in the car.
Well, people were already dying. Remember the selfie craze? Yeah. And they were all dying because they're taking selfies.
2 years ago, people were falling onto the Grand Canyon.
Right, because they were distracted and they weren't paying attention to what they're doing because they're too interested in taking the selfie.
Yep.
All it's doing is weeding out the stupid. That's all it's doing. And that's okay with me. Really, it is.
Well, I just know when I see people kids riding their bikes all the time, looking down at their cell phone, and maybe they're going no-handed. And I'm thinking, boy, aren't we brilliant? Boy, we brilliant.
But here's the thing. Smartphones, I am so glad I grew up, to be honest with you, before smartphones, before the internet, before all that stuff.
Of course.
Where I could be a kid.
Hey,
I could have all these great experiences.
Joel, I was born before the phonograph.
You were born before there were records?
Yeah, I think so.
Wow. So anyhow, then you really know what it's like.
Oh, hell yeah.
So what I'm saying is this, is these people that are out there and they're on their little device. I see it all the time too. I see it constantly. There's people, adults, people my age that are just addicted to their phones. Like, will not look up for 2 minutes. I work with a guy that played a video game all hour on his phone.
Yep.
I mean, just
the thing is, it is addicting, and I get that. But wake up, people. You cannot spend all your time looking at your screen.
No, but the way I look at this is, it's going to weed out the dumb. If they're dumb enough to put themselves in danger for this instant gratification, because that's what it is from your phone, is the instant gratification.
Well, no, I'm not even worried about that. I'm worried about them weeding out us.
Well,
I was riding, I was on my motorcycle, and some lady's coming right at me head on. Some little red car. And I'm thinking, oh, she's going to veer off at any moment. No. Never once veered off. Never once changed lanes. And I had to move way off to the side. And she went by in the wrong lane.
Jeez.
She never even looked up. She was looking down. Just driving, looking down.
Yeah, probably texting and driving.
Yeah, because I think people, when they're texting, they get lost. They're like, okay, one more word.
I know my wife, I love her to pieces, but if you call her on the phone while she's driving, she might end up in Albuquerque. She just loses all track of where she is, and she just drives and talks. I think one time, she was going the wrong direction. I've had to rescue her before, telling her, hey, this is how you get home.
It's true.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
the other thing I was just thinking about, I was just doing a shower thought today, and I was thinking all of the things, because I read something that triggered this, all of the things that seem to be too much of a coincidence going on right now, like, for instance, the metaverse, right?
Yeah.
All perfect timing for a pandemic.
Sure.
To push this kind of crap. Perfect.
Sure.
Isn't it perfect timing that Jeff Bezos decided to buy a big food delivery service right before the pandemic?
Right.
How does somebody get that freaking lucky?
Right. Inside information, my friend. Inside information.
I just wonder, there's so many examples of that where I see companies just getting just filthy rich on some lucky, amazing coincidence.
Yeah, coincidence. Yeah, we'll call it that. We'll call it a coincidence. Or, how some of our lawmakers dumped all their stock right before, this happened.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking
things
about.
like that, yeah.
Little happy accidents.
But I was thinking, what are the chances that you just decide to buy the biggest and put in the biggest online food delivery thing like weeks before the pandemic hits?
Yep. Yeah. No, I hear you. Things that make you go,
So never waste a good crisis.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, you have people like the Jeff Bezos. You have all these other billionaires that have made just massive amounts of money. They're just filthy, filthy rich, these people, and the one percenters that are clued into what's going to happen, and we clearly are not clued in. So they thrive while some of us literally die.
It's true. It's true. Now we have, more probably restrictions coming our way, maybe. I hope not.
I sure hope not. It can go away. It's done. As far as I'm concerned, this is getting ridiculous. Yeah, I could say a lot, but I don't want to because we're not a political show. So
thing is, if you just keep locking everything down, we're going to die anyhow.
Well, that's the thing. Okay, here's the thing. They've killed pretty much every mom and pop business you can think of, especially restaurants. Oh my God.
You're not
Restaurants in my area are down to the big chains, and that's about it.
Yep. That's sad. That's so sad.
And the mom and pop restaurants that used to be there, great places with great people, they A, can't get employees because, of what's going on. And B, because of the fact that this is what's going on, they cannot afford to survive without the money that we would bring in by eating at their establishment. So therefore, our local economy gets decimated while these big chain stores thrive because they are big enough to absorb it. But no, not just absorb it, thrive during it, like a Walmart, like a Amazon, things like that have definitely used this to their advantage.
Oh, yeah.
While of the backbone of this country, which that was always the small businessman, which was always the entrepreneur, is going to be no more. And we're going to be forced to shop at half a dozen different places.
Which literally, if you think about it, it's what supports the middle class are all these small businesses.
110%. 110%.
Or the upper middle class, but the point is, it's really the spine. It's what what joins us all together.
Exactly. It is. It's taking away the jobs that kids can get to. Like, right? What's your first job? Like maybe at a mom and pop shop. Maybe you got your first job at a convenience store that was locally owned and wasn't like a Quick Trip or another large chain. Yeah. And, stuff like that. So they're taking away jobs that these kids could be doing. Well, what's going to happen when these jobs aren't there for these kids to have? Where are they going to go to work? To learn work ethic. Because that's really where we learn work ethic is our first jobs, right? Right, Doug?
Yeah.
But the people, our mentors around us that teach us work ethic and how to do things. And really, those are the times that we learn. I know I did. And it just really makes me sad because I know one of several, Gilbert, my little town, we have no restaurants. We have one restaurant left. We used to have 4 of them. We have none.
Yep.
We have one. And that's the one I took you to before the ride.
Yeah, and I think that the one we went to was my mom's favorite restaurant, actually.
Oh, the Village Inn. Yeah, that's a
Yeah, it
great
was
place,
just,
by
and
the way.
the food was really good. I mean,
Yeah.
it was I guess what you would call a greasy spoon, but the food is so very homemade, tasting, and generous. Like I had the best bacon I ever had in my life at that restaurant when I
Yeah.
was with you.
Yeah, that was good stuff.
It was just
Good stuff. We'll have to get back there, Doug.
say, do you know what a caracol is?
A caracol?
Yeah, it's an animal. Do you know what one is?
I have never put eyes on a caracol.
Oh, okay. Well, they keep okay. So they had apparently people were sighting these weird like cougar. They look like cougars, but they have big ears. Like they stick way the hell up.
Oh, I see it now. Yep, and I have seen one of those before. Yep, you're right. They have real antenna almost looking ears.
They had a whole bunch of them running around Michigan. And I'm thinking, oh, okay.
They're kind of cute.
And they are cool, and they're probably not terribly dangerous, because they're about 50 pounds, and they're from Africa. But the reason I bring it up is, I just got done doing this editing for the trailer for this Britain's Big Cat Mystery, and that's because these cats really are good at surviving on their own. And they, if they can find another mate, they're going to have little kittens. And I don't care if it's a freaking leopard or if it's a lion or a tiger. You can remember, like tigers, for instance, live in Siberia. Yeah. Well, that's just like Gilbert, the forest. Gilbert.
Yeah, just like where you are, where I am.
A whole bunch of tigers up in Gilbert, and they would just do great.
Oh, yeah.
Winter, they'd survive in the snow, 20 below, no problem.
Yeah.
And that's kind of their element. People always think tigers as kind of in hot jungles.
Sure.
And yeah, they survive in hot Asian jungles too. But they're also in like Siberia. They're used to. And the reason I bring it up is there is really quite a lot of like black leopards, jaguars, cougars living in England, where you'd never think about it. And that's why we did this show. And I did an episode of that on MonsterQuest too, like the Beast of Exmoor.
Sure.
But the reason I bring it up is when I traveled around the country, Joel, and I would ask, have you ever seen a Bigfoot? If they didn't see a Bigfoot, or if they did, a lot of them always said, no, but I got a hell of a big cat story to tell you.
Okay.
And so I just started recording like all over the country, everywhere we went. We would run into maybe in a town, maybe 10 people that had what they would call a black leopard sight. Because they're saying they were like 5 times bigger than a house cat and long rope tail and jet black and a big head.
Yeah. And they'd have these stories about cats that don't belong there.
Yeah.
You know?
I just wonder how many stray exotics are roaming North America. I do wonder that.
Yeah.
Like way worse than England.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be interesting to find out. Exactly, because you're right. A lot of people do have these sightings. Heck, I've seen cougars where I am. But then again, that's not too far-fetched because it was their native territory at one time.
Yeah, it is. I was with actually a guy named Jake Hole. And he was my camera guy for Mysterious Encounters. And we left. We were leaving on a big expedition. And we needed 500 feet of audio cable. And I'm thinking, it's like 4 a.m. I'm thinking, hey, let's go to Walmart. They're open 24 hours.
Yeah.
So we leave at 4 a.m. We head off. We get up on County Road 52. And what do you think crosses right in front of my van? A black leopard.
Really?
We both saw.
That's crazy.
It ran. It was running. But there's no way it was just a regular cougar. It was jet black. It had a long rope tail, and it freaked us both out. And I looked at Jay, and I said, what do you think the chances are we're leaving in the morning, or today, doing a show called Mysterious Encounters.
And you have one.
And we have our own sighting.
That's a cool story. That is a very cool story.
Yep.
Very, very cool. Yeah, because a lot of people do, though. I've heard people talk about seeing black, you know what I mean, like a puma type cats up here.
But they're black.
You know. Yeah, they're big and they're black, and they swear up and down. Yep, I saw it.
Joe, who's my best friend, he said he saw one standing by a picnic table next to Hardee's in Coon Rapids, Minnesota. He said there's no way it was a house cat because its back went way over the seating.
Yeah.
And a house
that's
back
crazy.
Not go over the seating.
Yeah, right.
And he gets back to the office. He called the police.
Socks are the #1 most requested item in homeless shelters. Underwear is the second, shirts are third. At Bombas, socks were first, made with comfortable details for everyday wearing. Then underwear and shirts too, all designed to perfectly fit. At Bombas, every item you purchase means you're donating an essential clothing item to someone in need. One comfortable clothing item for you, one donated to someone in need. Bombas, comfort for all. Get 20% off your purchase at bombas.com/comfy.
If you're a general contractor, a subcontractor, or an owner, you want your jobs to be on time and on budget. And that means working with Autodesk Construction Cloud, software that lets your team design, plan, build, and operate from office to field. It means getting end-to-end solutions, seeing project data in real time, and preventing problems before they happen. Trusted on over 2 million construction jobs around the world. Build with Autodesk Construction Cloud. Try it free today at construction.autodesk.com.
And he never heard back from him.
Damn, man. Damn. Well, we got to get out of here. Wow, look at the time. We have to go. We come back. We have Bruce Maccabee with us. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back right after this. Get that all hooked up, right, Doug?
Yep.
And we'll see everybody at the other side of the break.
Hi, Tom Bodette. If you can hear me, then you have an internet connection, which means you can do cool things online, like listen to streaming radio, obviously, or watch a video of a monkey washing a cat. Let your freak flag fly. Or you can book a room at a great price at Motel6.com. Isn't the internet wonderful? Everything you want right at your fingertips, and whoa, did not need to see that. I'm Tom Bodette for Motel 6, and we'll leave the light on for you.
Unexpected reactions to smart financial decisions brought to you by feedthepig.org.
Well, I finally did it. My student loan is totally paid off.
I can't believe it.
I can't believe it either. I paid more than the minimum each month, and soon enough, it was gone.
So you're just giving up?
Giving up on what?
The life of luxury. Egyptian cotton, caviar Thursdays, designer everything.
What are you talking about?
Our plan. What happened to winning the lottery and mastering the art of the perfect mimosa? Hosting galas, wearing enough jewelry to require a bodyguard, vacationing in the French Riviera, and then buying it.
I just thought maybe it was time to prepare for my future. You know, set some financial goals, make some smart investments, open a 401k.
Financial goals? Investments? A 401k? You are horrifying right now. Listen, if winning the lottery were easy, everyone would do it.
When it comes to financial stability, don't get left behind. Get tools and tips for saving at feedthepig.org. This message brought to you by the American Institute of CPAs and the Ad Council.
Northern Tool and Equipment.
So me and the boys head out to tailgate today and find some other fans in our spot.
Well, it happens.
Cheering for the wrong team.
Oh, this is war.
Even worse, they've got this couch set up and everything.
A couch?
Yeah, it's sectional.
All right, first thing, don't ever use the word sectional again.
Done.
Second, I want you to grab a 4,700-pound tow chain with J-hook and grab hammer. Throw that on the back of your truck.
Got it.
Now you're going to Hail Mary the J-hook over the end of that couch. Time to find a better spot for your new friends.
That should do it.
There's no problem a little horsepower can't solve. Northern Tool and Equipment.
Taking a family of 5 to the amusement park can cost a small fortune.
Oh, yeah. So to save some money, we thought, hey, let's bring the amusement park to us.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
All right. Step right up, young man. Are you ready to ride the wacky waterfall?
That's just the bathtub with the shower head running.
Nope, it's the wacky waterfall.
It's the shower, Dad.
Waterfall.
Wacky.
There's an easier way to save. To get a free rate quote, go to geico.com. Then buy online, over the phone, or at your local Geico office.
Green light. Hey girl, school zone. I'm getting hungry. Car changing lanes. You want to meet me for pizza? Stop sign. Intersection clear. Yeah, street. Pizza sounds good. Ballin Street? Girlin Street!
It's hard to concentrate on two things at once, like texting and driving. Stop the text, stop the wrecks. How will you stop texting and driving? Tell us at stoptextstopwrecks.org. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
And welcome back to Untold Radio AM. I'm your host, Joel Sturgis. Right along with me is Mr. Doug Hajicek. And we are trying to hook a few things up, so while we talk, we'll just kind of entertain you, right, Doug? That's what
yeah, Bruce actually called me. He's available, he's waiting, but we're having problems hooking up into any format other than Facebook, which is weird.
Yeah, so I'm calling him again.
His landline's not working. Like, what the heck?
We might be reduced to doing this by a smoke signal.
Yeah, that'll work. Let me put you on mute, Joel, and I'm going to try to...
sure.
And just give me 1 second. You can whistle.
Oh, yeah. I'll whistle along here and talk to everybody. Back. So, Merry Christmas, everybody. And I can't believe Christmas is right around the corner. Man, oh man, oh man, oh man. Does the time fly? The year's almost over, too. That's the crazy part. Can't believe how quickly the year has gone by. It just keeps going. And, yeah, so hopefully you guys are having a great time and going to be healthy and happy and looking forward to the new year. I know I am. I'm hoping that will be much better than what we have already endured. That'll be good. So, yeah, that's really about it. I'm just kind of tap dancing here. So, I don't know about Doug, but I find that the whole centipede, millipede thing pretty interesting. That there would be a fossilized 100 pounds. Well, that's just crazy. Can you imagine that? Imagine having a 100-pound bug hanging around. That's crazy. I don't even like the bugs I find now. I could imagine a 100-pounder. That would be crazy. Not fun at all. Not fun at all, because spiders freak me out. What freaks you out? Man, I hate spiders. Hate spiders, hate snakes, hate all of them. But I guess if I had to choose one, boy, I guess I'd deal with the snakes before the spiders. At least you can see them better. Spiders, years ago when I was living in the warm south, we used to have these teeny tiny scorpions. I mean, just tiny little, almost translucent things. And I remember people were using special lights to be able to see them. And they're deadly. They tell me that they're the most dangerous thing you can encounter here. And this is in our United States South. And that these little scorpions, one sting could conceivably kill a person. Which is just nuts when you think about it. These little itty bitty, because you always think the big ones are the ones that pack the punch. It would turn out that the little ones are the ones that you gotta look out for. So people would be checking their shoes, God forbid if you had to go, into a house or under a home and you have to go look for these scorpions. Because I watched someone go under their trailer house one time. They owned a trailer and I was looking and I didn't know the guy. And so I saw he had this weird like UV light. So I walked over there and I said, "What the hell are you doing over here?" And he turns, he looks at me, he says, "I'm looking for scorpions. They love under these houses. So, we don't want to die." That whole thing. So I did that for a little bit, watched him do that. But you are either the bravest or the dumbest guy I know then, because I'm not going under there. No way. You could not get me to go under there at all. Just not for nothing. Not for nothing at all. So that is my story with strange creatures that will kill you. Because, it seems like when you live in the South, and I know when I have been in Florida, and It just seems like everything is designed to kill you there. Everything is engineered to kill you. So I guess maybe that's why I live where I live, is up north. But God bless you guys that live in the south. And that's some tough stuff right there. That is some tough stuff.
I'm back, Joel.
Bruce, that's good.
Bruce is about to call in to the studio line.
Oh, well, that would be good.
So we'll try that.
Yeah, let's give that a try. Hey, I saw the other day, Doug. I saw the new Spider-Man movie. I don't know if you like, Spider-Man movies, but this is really good. And that had to deal with the multiverse.
Okay. No, I've never seen Spider-Man.
You don't even watch Spider-Man movies? What's wrong with you?
I don't have any time. I'm reading too many
articles.
articles.
You don't have any time. No, you're not reading articles. You're reading headlines. Let's just be honest.
Okay. I'm reading too many headlines.
So I went and saw I took the whole family, kids included, to go over there to watch the Spider-Man.
There you go.
And so here we are.
Make it. Is it a good connection?
Yep, good connection on my end.
We are live, Bruce.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, good deal. Good deal. So tonight we got a special guest on for everybody. Hey, this is the last, this isn't the last one, but near the last, I guess the holiday season of Untold Radio AM. Wouldn't it be, Doug? Because we don't have another one for Christmas. So
before
Christmas gift is, we got the one, the only Bruce Maccabee on, legendary UFO researcher and Navy physicist. He's retired now. Bruce is a legendary UFO researcher and optical scientist who separates real from hoaxes using science. He uses the science to, separate the wheat from the chaff when it comes to UFOs. He is no doubt one of the first in the UFO field, and maybe the first to apply, or really he is, apply science to looking for UFOs. So without any further ado, I'd like to invite or thank Mr. Bruce Maccabee for coming on the show.
You're welcome. It's gonna be fun.
It's gonna be a great time.
Say, Bruce, I want to ask you a question right out of the chute. What was the first UFO case you worked on?
Well, the first case that I actually wrote up, because there were some that I just watched what somebody else was doing to find out how to do it, investigate. Well, the first case was in a place called Mount Jackson, Virginia, where an official of the town of Mount Jackson saw this thing hovering over a mountaintop. This is in Virginia, and he watched it continually as he drove from where he worked south along a highway till he got to where his home was, and the thing stayed over the top of a mountain. And I interviewed him. I heard about the case through the grapevine. Went into his house and interviewed him. He had brought his kids out to see it. He had stood in a certain location where a power line. He was standing under a power line, and he stood under the power line and bisected this thing that looked like a rocket. And he had made some measurements, in other words. It was many months before I first heard about it, but when I did, I went and talked to him. And then a year later, I visited him again and checked up on what he remembered. He had drawn a little diagram of this rocket-like thing with a sort of a exhaust coming out the back end. Oh, it wasn't going anywhere. It was just sort of hovering over the mountaintop. And he remembered a year later almost exactly what he had drawn the first time. So I concluded that this is most likely a real thing, and he had a good recollection of his sighting. And that was in 1974, I think. That's the first one that I actually wrote up. And I sent it to Science Magazine with little hope of ever getting it published in Science Magazine. The editor of Science sent it back. The copy that I sent to him, he kept for 2 weeks and sent it back saying, well, we've got enough articles lined up for Science Magazine. it would be quite a while before we get to yours. And in other words, goodbye.
Yeah.
Because anybody would be willing to wait a year for an article in Science because of the tremendous circulation it would get. So anyway, that article is on my website if anybody wants to read what it looks like to write an article for Science magazine and have it rejected.
Super interesting. You know, I think it was probably back in the 70s. It could have been in the 80s. There was a big article in our local newspaper, the Minneapolis Star and Tribune, that you had participated in analyzing the McMinnville photos.
That was the first photo case.
Yeah,
starting at the top. Nothing like starting at the top, you might say, because it was endorsed, essentially, by William Hartman, the photo analyst for the Condon study. It's the only case that he didn't give 100% to, but he said it seemed that everything analyzed, everything that he studied seemed to indicate that an extraordinary flying object had passed within the sight of two witnesses, unquote. And that was published in 1969. And I was struck by the fact that no scientist took up the battle to beat that case down. Phil Klass and Robert Schaefer, Klass being the world's most skeptical skeptic at the time.
Yep.
And his friend Schaefer, who knew some optics and photography and so on, they put into Klass's second book, UFOs Explained, their analysis, which is largely based on...
Hi, I'm Randy, and this is Dave.
We're the founders of Bombas, the most comfortable socks in the history of feet.
So comfortable, we sold and donated millions of pairs.
To sell and donate a lot of socks, we became obsessed with comfort.
We reinvented the sock from the ground up, adding comfort innovations along the way.
It worked. People tried them, loved them, told their friends about them,
helping us sell and donate millions of pairs.
Try them now at bombas.com/comfy and get 20% off your first order. That's bombas.com/comfy.
Over 2 million construction jobs around the world are taking their projects to the next level, from roadways to railways, from skyscrapers to homes. Make your vision a reality. Build with Autodesk Construction Cloud. Try it free today at construction.autodesk.com.
Finding what they were claiming were flaws in the story.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I was surprised that nobody of note had taken up this photo case, because here was a guy hired essentially to explain everything, and admitting that it was perhaps not explainable. You would think somebody would have picked up the hammer and beat down the Trent case. But anyway, nobody did. I managed to get a hold of the negatives with Phil Klass's help, and that's an interesting story by itself. And by the way, everything that I'm telling you is on my website. You can look up there's two standalone articles on this particular case. One of the first article is the technical analysis and how I confirmed what William Hartman had done to calculate the apparent distance of this object from the camera. And once you know the distance, you can figure out the size based on the angular size of the image. Anyway, this is probably what put me on the map, so to speak, because I presented my results at the first UFO conference of the Center for UFO Studies. I think that was in 1976 in Chicago, and nobody came forward to dispute what I had to say. Then I wrote another paper on the website, which is largely the circumstantial evidence that goes into the case, and numerous interviews and the hours I spent talking to Mrs. Trent and stuff like that. So anyway, yeah, it was like starting at the top in terms of the importance of this sighting, because it's either the real thing or a hoax. There's no halfway point. I don't know if any of your listeners are familiar with the Trent case, but as I said, there's two articles on the Trent case in my website, and there's pictures of it, so you can see what the thing looks like.
Yeah, the pictures are very clear, but here's why it had an impact on me, Bruce, because even at a pretty, I was a young guy, I thought those photos were fake until I read this very extensive article that you were a part of and how you had proven that they were real. And that had a huge impact on me. And I thought, ooh, so I'm looking at photos of a real, probably an interstellar craft. And it just kind of blew me away.
Well, I'm glad I blew you away. Apparently not too far because you're still here.
I'm still here. So can you tell us the story of the McMinnville photos and how they came to be?
Well, Farmer Trent, Paul Trent, and his wife had a farm, just like old MacDonald, I guess. Anyway, they had this farm 12 miles southwest of McMinnville. It's called the McMinnville Photos because that's the largest city that's nearby, or the Trent Photos. And Mrs. Trent was outside feeding rabbits in a cage behind the big garage they had. And she had just finished feeding the rabbits and was turning around, making a turn clockwise, I suppose, from facing west, roughly, to feed the rabbits. She was turning to face north, and she sees this thing up in the sky, and she wonders what she's looking at. And she says her first impression was she was looking at a good size, not a canopy, but I'm trying to think of I'm getting old, and my brain sometimes cuts out.
It's okay.
Parachute is what I was trying to think of. She thought it was a good-sized parachute, but then she realized she couldn't see the little man hanging under it, and so it wasn't a parachute. She called for her husband, who was in the house, to come and look, and I guess one of them decided to bring the camera. In any case, he ended up with the camera and taking two photos as this thing came from their north to their right, and they're facing west when these two photos were taken. It came from the north and then headed west, and it slowed down enough when it was closest to their farm so he could get two photos of it. And he got these two photos. I already had a film in the camera. He already had taken a couple of pictures with this. This was what we now consider old-fashioned 612 roll film, and he had taken a couple of pictures of it, and a couple of pictures before, and he took two pictures of the UFO, and then he took a few more pictures to finish off the roll over the next couple of weeks. He wasn't at all overly anxious to get this thing developed. Unlike that was one of the criticisms was, well, it couldn't be real because he waited 2 weeks to. Any normal person would immediately run to the newspapers or something like that if they had a picture of a UFO. And he said that he was actually somewhat afraid of it, that he might have photographed something that was top secret or whatever. In any case, he showed it to members of his family, and word leaked out that he had taken these pictures, and a guy at the local banker vouched for Trent's credibility and no-nonsense farmer type and all that. So they published the new local paper, which was at that time called the Telegraph Register or something. they published those pictures, and we'd say nowadays it went viral.
Yeah.
They got published in all sorts of places, and the Trents were invited to participate in a TV show in New York City. They were flown to New York City and flown back and told they would be given their negatives back, but they never did. They didn't get the negatives back. They sort of got lost. Now this was in June of 1950 when the negatives were lost in the files of the International News Service. Nobody knew where they were until Hartman, as part of his work for the condom study, decided to work on the Trent case, and he managed to locate the negatives, so he had original data to work with, and then he sent those back to this news service place, and they got lost again for a short time. The local editor of the local paper managed to get them and sent them to me. I borrowed them from the Trents. I said I'd keep them for a couple of weeks maybe to do some experiments with it. And a couple of decades later, literally, I was doing work on the Trent case in 1975, and they probably got those negatives back around 1995.
Wow!
I hung on to it once I had an answer. I knew that I might have to support this. You have to have the original data if you're going to make a statement of such importance. I mean, to say that this is real and it's not ours, that's pretty potent statement. That's what I ended up with. But in any case, I had to do some analysis. I had to learn Hartman's method of measuring distance, and then make my own measurements. And this is all spelled out in these two papers. I remember probably it was 1976 or 77, one night after I had been thinking about the calculations and realizing that I had introduced a factor that the other people had not thought of. And once I figured out this factor related to shadow, darkness, and brightness, I knew I had, what I had done is proven that you couldn't say it was a fake because of distance. You couldn't say it was only like 10 feet away from the camera and a small model hanging from a wire. So I remember lying in bed and awake telling my first wife something like this: I'm famous, but nobody knows it. Anyway.
Well, what do you do in a case? I mean, okay, let's just jump to modern times. We don't use film anymore with negatives. Nobody does.
Right.
How in the world has that changed what you would have to do nowadays?
Well, let me tell you something. Even back in the old days, when you had film and so on that you could play with, it's still one of the things I learned from doing the Trent case, really the whole thing, technical stuff plus the everything that goes along with it. I learned that a photo of a UFO does not make. Because they could have faked it if they had been lucky. There's no evidence, and dozens of people have looked, there's no evidence of a string from the top of this model, this image, up to the wire that's up above it. Now, that could be because there is no string. Could be because the Trents lucked out and used white thread instead of black. The first thought people would think of, if I want to suspend something, a model, and not be able to see the suspension, well, I'll use black thread. No, you won't be able to see it. You forget the fact that this thread is silhouetted against the dull sky. There's light coming on each side of the thread, but not through the thread. So the thread becomes visible by shadow effect, more or less. And the bottom line is, the old days, it was harder maybe to fake something because you couldn't just do CGI, computer-generated imagery. You couldn't just do some CGI and make it look good. You had to have all the parts of a picture consistent, and the Trent photo was consistent with what they said. So anyway, when you're confronted with the modern situation and you realize that CGI can do a pretty good job, you look at the edges of the images and stuff like that, see if they're blended, and of course you have a different type of noise background with modern photography. The old photography, you had a fundamental noise floor due to the fact that the opaque part of the picture was due to little chunks of exposure stuff, silver iodide, and precipitated out to be little chunks of silver, and so you got actually is a random situation of noise, simply because the edges of objects and so on would be made up of these little blobs of stuff that's developed in the film. And CGI there's something that's very similar. But the bottom line is, you got to get what I was trying to get at was, you can almost always, I guess, I think it would be safe to say always, figure out how somebody could either do something intentionally or be lucky about it. And so you could, I concluded that it would be a rare case where the photo itself would be absolute proof. You got to have all the circumstantial evidence lined up to a good story behind it, in other words. And the Trents, well, the photo editor of the newspaper, who went to the Trent's house, got the negatives, took them back to the newspaper office. He said, I blew those things up every which way and I couldn't figure out what they did. Finally, I had to conclude that they were real. And I said, why was that? He said, they were too stupid.
Well, wow. I mean, that's a factor. It's a factor if they didn't, have a lot of sophistication.
Yeah, well, they wouldn't. His impression after talking to them for maybe an hour or so, or whatever time it took to interview them, plus lots of other people that I spoke to who had known the Trents, they would never think of, if they did think of doing something like that, they wouldn't know how to do it. But the probability of them even thinking for some reason or other that it was worthwhile to fake a UFO photograph, they wouldn't get that far. They'd never think of it.
Hi, I'm Randy, and this is Dave.
We're the founders of Bombas, the most comfortable socks in the history of feet.
So comfortable, we sold and donated millions of pairs.
To sell and donate a lot of socks, we became obsessed with comfort.
We reinvented the sock from the ground up, adding comfort innovations along the way.
It worked. People tried them, loved them, told their friends about them,
helping us sell and donate millions of pairs.
Try them now at bombas.com/comfy and get 20% off your first order. That's bombas.com/comfy.
If you're a general contractor, a subcontractor, or an owner, you want your jobs to be on time and on budget. And that means working with Autodesk Construction Cloud, software that lets your team design, plan, build, and operate from office to field. It means getting end-to-end solutions, seeing project data in real time, and preventing problems before they happen. Trusted on over 2 million construction jobs around the world. Build with Autodesk Construction Cloud. Try it free today at construction.autodesk.com.
Wow. Now, the other thing was, there was more than one photo, correct, Bruce?
There's two.
Yeah, so doesn't that help also when there's sequential pictures?
Well, yeah, it all adds up, but still, bottom line is, they could, in principle, the physics of the situation, they could have faked the original. They could, instead of having black thread and the standard thing that would stand out against a sort of a bright background, taking a light-colored thread, either by accident or on purpose, depending on how clever you think they are, and using a thread that matches the background. After all, we only see things because of contrast. If there was no contrast between the thread and the background sky, you couldn't see the thread ever.
Mm-hmm.
So in this situation, they would have had to be very clever or luck out to use something like a thread that matches the background sky color. But
were you
no
ever
evidence that they would be that smart.
Were you ever asked to examine any of the Billy Myers stuff, who's just, obviously been extremely controversial? Were you ever asked to analyze any of his footage or his still photos?
Yeah, I have on my another article on the website about the Billy Meyer photos. The movie really is what I analyzed. The movie, which is the first thing that he came up with, which has this thing that moves back and forth, left and right. I hate to use the term because I sort of bias the thought of the listener is biased by the terminology I use, which is it goes back and forth like a pendulum.
Yeah, like
that word loudly. And it was the paper I published in the Center for UFO Studies, International UFO Studies. The pendulum from the Pleiades was what Terry Clark, the editor, picked for my title. The pendulum from the Pleiades. Well, I watched this movie and I got a hold of a complete copy of the movie itself, so I could see frame by frame what was going on, and I could see that it looks, just by looking at it, it looks like something swinging about a rotation point that's up above the frame. You can't see what the support point is, but you can imagine what it is, because you see the body of the UFO tilt as it would tilt as it goes back and forth if it were suspended at one point by a string. So I said, okay, let's assume that it's a pendulum. Does that make any sense? And I plotted the position of the UFO as a function of time. And what I found was it obeyed the equation for a pendulum. The thing about there's two types of pendulums. There are two types of rotation going on in this movie. The two types of pendulum are a planar pendulum, which is like you would see in a pendulum clock. It stays in a vertical plane. You only need up and to the right. There's two axes to plot the position of this planar pendulum. The other type of pendulum is a torsion pendulum, which makes a swirling rotation. It's always the suspension is always at a angle with respect to vertical. With the planar pendulum, the suspension changes as the object goes back and forth. With this other type of pendulum, the angle stays the same, but there's a rotation going on in the horizontal plane. Is where there's a rotation, like you had a circle drawn on a horizontal plane, and that circle is where the UFO rotates. Well, there were both types of motion in this movie, and it just so happens that the planar pendulum and the torsion pendulum have the same period, swinging back and forth and back again, the same period, and it did indeed have that. So I concluded that you couldn't tell the difference between a pendulum that was made to swing back and forth one way or another, and a UFO that did that. Billy's explanation was that, well, they don't often fly in this bad way, but they sort of like saying they can do a lot better if they have to. What I concluded was that I couldn't say that Billy Meyer had no experiences, but I wasn't going to use his information on UFOs as part of any proof that I might try to make about UFOs.
So basically, the bottom line is there was nothing in the Billy Meyer photo stable or video stable or film stable that you could conclude was a real craft, correct?
Correct.
Yep. Okay. So he just he gets to continue with his, hoaxing if he was hoaxing, or the controversy that'll never end.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody's doing any research with him now. 20 years ago, he was pretty hot property to do research on. Some people actually went and visited him in Switzerland, and his wife testified to some people, as I recall correctly, that he had made models, and she didn't think that it was real.
Gotcha. So a listener was listening to you talk about the Trent photos, and he was asking were there any new photos that Trent's son had brought forward recently, or is that just a rumor?
I don't know. I haven't been in contact with him for a long time, and I don't know anything about what Trent's son might have said one way or another.
Very interesting. Yeah, those photos are pretty amazing. Of course,
crazy.
Billy Meyer's stuff, and I never thought his stuff was real. I don't think most people did. I don't think he was ever really taken terribly serious. Is that a safe thing to say, Bruce? That his
apparently some people took him seriously.
Well, some people did, but
support him. His lifestyle, whatever it was. He owns land, I guess, in Switzerland. I'm not really sure. But
let's change.
My attitude was, I got other things that are better to do. Like, for example, at the time I was analyzing the Meyer photos, starting in 79, I think, when I started that. I was also working on the formerly famous New Zealand sightings of December 1978, which are head and shoulders above almost anything. As a matter of fact, I consider these sightings to be the gold standard for sightings where you don't have military type equipment being involved. The New Zealand sightings involved the pilot, an airplane flying from Wellington, New Zealand, the south end of the North Island. There's two islands that make up New Zealand. Starting from Wellington and flying south to Christchurch, New Zealand, and then flying north to a place called Blenheim. Now, on the flight south and the flight north, both flights, they got they saw lights appearing in the sky at the same time. Wellington Air Traffic Control Center was reporting radar targets Well, what makes this unique is the various types of data. You've got a pilot, and the pilot and co-pilot has flown this route hundreds of times. They were experienced people, and the pilot on the trip south, the guy who flew the trip south, had been the head of the New Zealand Pilots organization for many years. Anyway, the pilot, the co-pilot, very familiar with this, flying this route from Wellington to Christchurch, and there had been sightings on 20th of December by a different crew, a different air crew, and they had detected stuff. The Wellington Air Traffic Control Center had detected stuff, targets appearing around the airplane, and they were strange targets that seemed to be able to jump from one place to another, making a track. Well, they could make a track. It was like you traveled so fast you couldn't be picked up, and maybe going a distance of many miles in 12 seconds, the rotation rate of the antenna. Anyway, these sightings on December 20th had made news in New Zealand and Australia because the pilots involved and the radar involved. So a show producer, Leonard Lee, a guy who produced, one of the producers at what was then Channel Zero in Melbourne, decided around the end of December that a little mini documentary, a 5-minute documentary on the previous sightings in December 10th, 20th, and 21st. A little show on that documentary would probably go over well with the audience. So he calls up a guy who's on vacation he's a guy who works for the newspaper in Melbourne, Australia, but he was on vacation in the South Island of New Zealand. And the show producer called him up and said, "Why don't you do a little mini on those sightings?" So the guy who was calling up was Quentin Fogarty. They got Bill Startup, the pilot, Robert Gard, the co-pilot, and now Quentin Fogarty, who was the reporter, a senior reporter at Channel Zero in Melbourne, and he hired a cameraman, David Crockett, and David Crockett's wife Crockett operated a 16 millimeter Bolex camera, movie camera, and Nairi Crockett, his wife, ran the tape recorder. So they were making a tape recorder on the airplane, and you have a tape recorder that was recording communications with the plane and the Wellington Air Traffic Control Center. So you've got pilot, co-pilot, reporter, cameraman, and the cameraman's wife. Was that 5 people? And these are people on the airplane, and you got 2 people involved with looking at the radar at Wellington. So you got a lot of eyeballs, experienced eyeballs looking at this. He gets a color movie film of the stuff. That's rare. And at the same time, they're getting Wellington traffic radar as they go on a trip from Wellington to Christchurch, flying south. When they turn around, they're taking newspapers from Wellington to Christchurch. They unloaded the newspapers and flew the plane back north to a place called Blenheim. And they got a lot of movie film at that point. It's taken up most of my entire time of analyzing the movie.
Yeah, because this happened more than one night. This was an event that.
Well, the first night, December 20th and 21st, is what alerted people that something's going on. But it was Leonard Lee, the TV producer, who decided it might be a good, a nice thing to do a little documentary on the December 21st sightings, and that's what made it into the international news when they got film coinciding with some radar targets on the way south from Wellington to Christchurch, and they got a lot more film as they're heading north to go to Blenheim. As soon as the plane landed at Blenheim, the cameraman called up TV station in Melbourne and said, "I got to fly home real quick. I got this stuff."
Mm-hmm.
And he set it all up so that when he was met at the airplane, I suppose, taken to the TV station where they developed the film and reviewed it. Unfortunately, Quentin Fogarty, the reporter, was really strung out on lack of sleep by this time. But he ended up staying up 48 hours straight or whatever it was to come up with a text to go along with the film. They basically advertised this as the world's first film of UFOs, and it made international news. A lot of different organizations in various countries bought the rights to show the movie. Not only did they have the movie too, they did about a half-hour documentary themselves on what was happening.
Yeah, I remember all that.
They got it all screwed up, like garbage in, garbage out, because they didn't do the first thing you have to do, which is get an accurate history of what's going on. That's what I find out. As a UFO investigator, using scientific methods, I find spend more time getting the history correct.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only way you can understand what lights are going on. For example, if you just ran through the movie film from beginning to end, you would see lights of various types appearing at various times and so on, but it wouldn't make any sense to you until you find out, for example, that the first UFO light that the cameraman got was a bluish-white thing that appeared 3 times. We figure out that he was sitting in the seat between the pilot and the co-pilot and filming directly out through the windows of this airplane. And the skeptic would say, well, there was something out there. But the Air Traffic Control Center in Wellington said there was no other traffic near this plane that was flying south. And at the time that this blue light came, the air traffic controller says to the airplane, and as I said, you got a tape recording in the air traffic control center. So you got 2 tape recordings going in. How many times has that happened in a UFO case? He's looking out through the window and he sees this blue thing. Where he's looking in the direction projected outwards would take him into Antarctica. So it's obvious that he wasn't picking up. There were no blue lights at all on the airplane. Mm-hmm. There wasn't any airplane around. Something was there, which the pilot was told by the air traffic control center, we have a target at 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
Or rather 12 o'clock to you. At 3 miles or something like that. And the pilot immediately said, "Thank you, we pick it up. It's got a flashing light."
Wow. Man, great stuff.
So oddly enough, when I was analyzing this stuff and the radar targets, they tell you first of all, the radar beam sweeps around 12 seconds in 12 seconds. So an ordinary target is going at some tens or hundreds of miles an hour, and it'll only go a certain distance in 12 seconds. Making a blob, a little dot, a fat dot on the radar screen, and you can. The radar screen has fluorescent material on it. When the beam sweeps by, you get a bright blip where there's a return on the screen. There's a bright blip. The next time, 12 seconds later, this beam sweeps around. You got another bright blip, but this next bright blip is not very far from the first one. The beam sweeps around again. You got a third blip. Now you got 3 blips in a row. The first blip is fading. The second blip is fading. The first blip, the newest blip, is as bright as it can get, and it starts to fade as the beam sweeps around again. Point being that you can tell where an airplane or some ordinary target is going by looking at these blips tied together. One blip, the blips might be, the spacing between the blips probably only represents a couple of miles. So when the air traffic controller says you've got a target right in front of you, and that happens on one sweep of the radar, the next sweep, the target's now 3 miles behind you, and the captain says, he didn't know we were so fast. As to be able to travel a distance of several tens of miles. Well, now, when I was first analyzing that, I was a bit dubious about the apparent ability of this thing to zap from one place to another in 12 seconds, covering many miles. But with this recent Tic Tac video stuff, I haven't talked to Fravor, but I have talked to Kevin Day, who was the radar operator that saw these things drop from 28,000 feet down to 550 feet above the ocean in 0.78 seconds. I was getting confirmation, you might say, of the extreme speed these things can have, which was alluded to in a sense in the New Zealand sightings, where these radar dots were moving around with not leaving a trail. The same thing happened with something similar happened with the Tic Tac sightings. So in other words, the Tic Tac sighting indicated there was extreme capability, high acceleration, and confirming what I could have reasoned, I suppose, 40 years earlier, in 1978, looking at the dots appearing around the screen as if they were just sort of going from one place to another in 12 seconds, and covering many miles in 12 seconds. So the point is that the more recent data allows us a better interpretation of what was going on when we saw it in New Zealand.
Yeah, that's So how did you feel when you first saw the new Tic Tac footage and all that? I mean, that must have brought a smile to your face, Bruce.
Yeah, after I figured out what its significance was. Now the video, which is the first video, which shows the object in the tracking gate, and then all of a sudden it goes off to the left, right off the screen.
Gotcha.
That was supposedly extremely high speed, but that's what it was characterized as. Nothing could do this sudden turn to the left and go off the screen. Well, I was the first person to work my way through what that meant, and I suspected the people who saw that unknowingly thought that this did indicate an extreme speed, but how extreme? Not something like I had already graphed or taped from Gulf Breeze, Florida. You see this. You see the unknown thing leave the tracking gate and move to the left. How fast a motion is that? Well, all you're seeing is the leftward component of the velocity. The velocity vector of the airplane was essentially in a straight line, and this object was being held in the tracking gate, so it was going in a straight line too, and then suddenly went off to the left. The question is how much acceleration, how fast was it going when it went to the left?
So it made a right angle turn.
You don't really know until you know the exact track of this thing that moves to the left. It could be if it were going at a high speed forward and then made an abrupt turn to the left. It could be some high acceleration, but not necessarily. So I think that's hyped a bit. I did get a video from Gulf Breeze. Gulf Breeze had a monumental number of sightings.
That was in the 90s, correct?
1987 and 1997.
Yep, okay.
But most of them occurring from 1988 to about 1992, I guess.
And weren't there, just so our audience knows what we're talking about, weren't most of those still photos, Bruce? Or was there,
the ones that attracted attention were the still photos taken by Ed Walters.
Yep, I remember.
There were other witnesses, other photos. There were also some video of, and one video that I analyzed, where you're sitting there looking at the TV screen, the monitor, and you see this fat, bright dot shining in the sun, and it wobbles a little bit. But it could be the camera's wobbling. In any case, all of a sudden it's gone. If you slow it down to 1 frame per second, you can see what's happened. The image of the object is a little blob in the sunlight, and it's got a sort of backside shadow, so it's like bright and dark next to each other. It starts to move. It actually stretches. The image stretches. The image stretches more, and the image stretches even more as time goes on. And by 5 frames, you're off the screen of the video monitor. And this change of the shape of the image is expected when you think about it, because the exposure time is not instantaneous. It's some period of time, like a 30th of a second. And during that 30th of a second, the object moves a certain distance. So it's not moving at all up to some point. Then it moves a little bit. As it accelerates, the second frame of visibility, it moves more. The third frame, it moves even more. The fourth frame, it moves even more again. So the image itself is getting stretched because the camera's taking this as in 1/30th of a second steps. After 5 frames, you're off the screen. I calculated out to 12 Gs, I think. And when I compared that, now this is, like I said, in this case from Gulf Breeze, when it goes off to the left, you can see it easily move. This case in Gulf Breeze, Florida, where a guy videotapes an object that was just hovering in the sky, and then it takes off. It accelerates so fast that it stretches the image, and well, like I said, if you blink, you don't see it. in time. Or maybe you see one frame and then it's gone.
Socks are the #1 most requested item at homeless shelters. Underwear second, and shirts are third. At Bombas, socks were first, made with comfortable details for everyday wearing. Then underwear, and shirts too, all designed to perfectly fit. At Bombas, every item you purchase means you're donating an essential clothing item to someone in need. One comfortable clothing item for you, one donated to someone in need. Bombas, comfort for all. Get 20% off your purchase at bombas.com/comfy.
It was a lot faster than the Tic Tac video. That's why I was suspicious of the claim that the Tic Tac video definitely shows extreme acceleration. Well, it doesn't show acceleration as extreme as it was shown in the Gulf Reach case that I'm talking about.
Gotcha. So, Bruce, you wrote a book called 3 Minutes in June. It's a great title. And obviously that's about the Kenneth Arnold sighting. And do you want to just talk about that a little bit? Because nobody ever discusses the Kenneth Arnold sighting anymore, but yet, I mean, that changed everything.
Yeah, a lot of the ufology is packed into that one sighting. There's no abduction. There's no hardware, but there's just about everything else. We find by looking at newspaper stories and so on that occurred after his sighting was published, we learned that there had been sightings by numerous people before his sighting, but they hadn't told anybody. So nobody was aware that there was something going on. When Kenneth Arnold saw his objects, he was, as I point out in my book, the right guy at the right time at the right place. Because his personality was not to have his jaw drop to the floor, being stunned by watching these things go zipping along and doing nothing about it. Instead, he actually measured the time it took for him to go from Mount Rainier to Mount Adams. That was the 102 seconds to go 50 miles. And when that happened, he realized it was fast, but he didn't know it. He didn't know exactly how fast until he was able to do a calculation an hour or so later after he landed. Anyway, he's flying in the vicinity southwest of Mount Rainier. He was flying there in order to see if he could locate a crashed military plane. And as he said he's near a place called Mineral, Washington, and he is turning his airplane to head. He had gone past Mount Rainier, flying to the west. Then he returned to 180 degrees and was still looking for this downed airplane when there was he phrased it, a flash of light on his aircraft. Attracted his attention to what he was seeing. He looked around, thinking at first he had somehow gotten too close to another airplane, and the sun flashed. Sun reflected off of this other airplane and had made a flash in his cabin. But after a little bit of looking around, it was obvious there wasn't any aircraft nearby. Then he happened to see a light flash again, but this time it was the corner of his eye, and he realized it was coming from the north. At this point, he was heading east, and these things were north of him. And as he watched, he saw they were going at a high speed, and they were going a wiggly path between the mountaintops. They were not traveling a straight line up above the mountaintops. They were going in and out of the mountaintops. And he said they went between him and Mount Rainier, so he was able to get a good idea of their shape, being semicircular with a sort of a convex point at the rear end. And he was astounded that there was no control surfaces, no engine, no evident means of propulsion. So the shape, he said they were flipping and flashing in the sun, tilting back and forth, and occasionally in their tilts they would appear to him as being just a thin line going between him and Mount Rainier, and then they would fatten up again as they came out of their tilt. And there was 9 of them. One was different than the others. One of them had a double crescent at the back. That's the one that he's picked out to be the most unusual, I guess, because that's the one that you see published in most of the articles that refer to his sighting. His sighting, well, he measured speed. He got a good impression of what they looked like.
Mm-hmm.
And he turned his airplane. He said at one time he turned his airplane so he could look out through the window. Some people have suggested that he saw a reflection in the window of his airplane.
Sure.
He turned his airplane so he was flying parallel to these objects, and they were outrunning him. Well, anyway, he flew to Yakima, Washington, where he told some of his buddies about what he had seen. And they assumed that it was some new craft of the Air Force. And then he flew to Pendleton, Oregon, where he had some business to do. Stayed there overnight. And the next day he was interviewed by a TV station. He thought he should tell somebody because of the possibility that this was some Russian. After all, where they were coming from was the direction that the Russians might approach if they were attacking us or whatever. So anyway, he tells his story. They put it on the radio, and a short version of what he was saying. And then the next day they got a large version. And as time went on, he told this story several times. He had a written version of it that he sent to the Army Air Force in early July of 1947. By that time, his story had been out. When his story hit the press, it went viral. All sorts of newspapers and so on talked about somebody seeing some new type of airplane. That's because they assumed that they treated him as a real person, a businessman, not likely to make up stories like this. So his sighting was treated seriously at first. I think that when General Ramey stomped on the Roswell case and killed that, it sort of killed the interest in other cases as well. There were a lot of UFO sightings in that time period around 1947, June, July, and August of 1947. Ted Blocher, a member of NICAP, National Investigating Committee on Aerial Phenomena, an actor, a traveling actor, picked up news stories from various newspapers throughout the United States. He did this search, you might say, in the mid-1960s and discovered that the flap in 1947 had not been just Kenneth Arnold, a handful of other pilots and so on, but there had been upwards of 800 sighting reports through newspapers between April and August of 1947, with the peak being late June of 1947. If Kenneth Arnold had not made a report, somebody would have. It wouldn't have stayed silent forever. But Kenneth Arnold was taken seriously, and so his report was taken seriously, and lots of the people who contacted the Air Force or whatever said they felt it was their duty to report because it might be somebody's top secret aircraft. But it was obvious they could do things that we couldn't. And I called it 3 minutes in June because it was a definite period of time over which Earth's history changed.
That's
Did you
cool,
know,
though. Oh, sorry.
Did you know Arnold? Did you get to meet him?
Did what?
Did you ever get to meet Kenneth?
No.
Never did. Did
he
you
was
ever?
Still alive. He was still alive. But
yeah.
I never met him. Well, I was like other people who said, "Who cares about the Kenneth Arnold sighting? It's only one person, and there's no technical backup."
Well, I always remember it as
not that we necessarily thought that Kenneth Arnold was hoaxing it. It's just that everything relied on him, the accuracy of the taking 102 seconds off the time that it took the second hand to sweep around on the dashboard clock. Could he be wrong in the shapes of the objects and stuff like that?
But he was the one that coined the phrase that where he made the statement, they skipped like a saucer.
Right. He compared the way they flipped and flashed in the sunlight. They were undergoing, and Arnold deduced the correct solution to what these were. That they were not humans because they would fly not in a straight line, but they would zap from one point to another. They'd be tilting back and forth at very high speed. He got the impression that a human being would have a tough time living in one of those.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on the common sightings of orbs, which probably are not like nut and bolt type craft? They're not big enough to, hold anybody. What do you think they are? I mean, they must be real because we're constantly seeing them. I've seen literally hundreds myself, at low altitude. They don't appear to be much bigger than a basketball. What does a guy like you think about stuff like that when you hear these reports?
Well, it's hard to know what to think. I mean, it could be some sort of observation device.
Yeah. Okay. Like a drone.
Observing you, observing it. I have a photograph, one case on the case called Red Ball, Oregon, which a guy was out taking photographs of his backyard, just an ordinary backyard in I forget where he lives, but he notices coming up out of the ground at the base of a tree is this red light. This is daytime. He was taking daytime photos. So he thought that was pretty unusual, and he took a photograph of it. And then he watched it climb up to some height, 20, 30, 40 feet, and just disappear. Maybe we got a photograph of one of these red orbs. I don't know. Could it be CGI? This was taken with an ordinary camera years ago.
Yeah.
No indication that the guy would be likely to fake this.
Obviously, and we've had different people on that think that these are maybe even orbs are living entities of some sort.
Yeah, well, we've seen some stuff that looks like glowing stuff that looks like maybe entities or however you want to phrase it, but I don't know how you would prove it one way or another. Stick your hand into one.
That's the toughie. That's the toughie. But it's certainly, I think orbs are probably the most common UFO that people see. And yet,
certainly we had orbs during the Second World War.
Yeah, the Foo Fighters.
Yep.
And what in the world were they? We'll never know.
Right.
But I do wonder what a scientist like yourself thinks about that. Or do you just try not to because you can't do anything with it?
Over 2 million construction jobs around the world are taking their projects to the next level, from roadways to railways, from skyscrapers to homes. Make your vision a reality. Build with Autodesk Construction Cloud. Try it free today at construction.autodesk.com.
Well, you can ignore it and go on to something else. You might try to come up with some theory, like people have suggested that these are plasmas. Plasma is a volume of gas that's been ionized.
Right.
And it glows as the electrons fall back into their orbits. If you felt a St. Elmo's fire type of thing, stick your hand in it so you can feel electrocution feeling or anything at all. And for that matter, you might kill the orb by trying to stick something into it. They had a spate of orbs at the nuclear storage base in Texas, I think it is. It's in my book, The UFO FBI CIA Connection, that they were having orbs flying around this highly secure area, and they set up the Army was in charge of this base, killing base, someplace in Texas. The name doesn't come to me. But anyway, the Air Force studiously ignored the request of the Army to set up some sort of observation situation where they can keep track of these glowing things that were hovering around, I suppose, missile silos and stuff. And the Air Force wouldn't do it, so the Army went ahead and did it themselves. And apparently they got some results, but the problem is they didn't publish, you might say, in any way what they found. So we have a lot of raw data, statements about what these orbs were seen doing and so on, but no analysis of it.
Interesting. Have you ever had a sighting, Bruce? Anything?
Yeah, I saw in Florida in 1991, September. By this time, Ed Walters' photos had made Gulf Breeze the UFO capital of the world. There were literally hundreds of people who went to Gulf Breeze to see something and did, including news people. And in September of 1991, they had been having these sightings of a red light that would go traveling through the sky and all of a sudden burst into white flashes. I thought, well, these things that would travel along through the sky were seen by multi groups of people, and also you could do triangulation and determine where these objects were moving in some cases. And they're seeing these single lights, mostly single lights, that were going through the air above Gulf Breeze, which was a restricted area because the Pensacola airport was only a few miles away. So in September of 1991, they started getting rings of light appearing, a ring of lights. And so I figured I'd better, I didn't know how to handle this. I could imagine a single light being some sort of pyrotechnic device. There was no fallout. No, people weren't finding, although there were sightings almost every night, people were not reporting that they found burned out flare devices, fireworks and stuff. But then when they, so I couldn't, I nevertheless thought I could possibly explain those with fireworks. But then when ring of lights started appearing, it became difficult to say it was just somebody's fireworks. Mm-hmm. I went there, the first night I was there, Saturday night or something like that, Friday or Saturday night, I don't remember. I was there with a group of 30 other people, and virtually everybody had binoculars hanging around their neck, and folded cameras and video machines and so on. Some lady yelled, "There it is!" I had with me my binoculars hanging on my neck. I had a camera on a tripod. I had a big ear, a parabolic microphone, which is used for picking up distant noises. Somebody whispering across the other side of the room or something like that. Mm-hmm. And I had it there because I knew if this is a pyrotechnic display of some sort that was moving through the air, it would have to be making noise, one of these little airplane engines of some sort. And so I had my big ear there to pick up the airplane noise if there was any. So some lady yells, "There it is." She didn't say what direction it was, north, south, east, or west. She just said, "There it is." So I whipped up my binocular and looked up at the sky, and sure enough, previously I had looked up at the sky, and there was a haze layer or semi-thick cloud that would block your normal vision. Just looking with your eyes, you couldn't see the stars. But with the binoculars, you cut through the fog, you might say, and you could see the star background. So I flipped up the binoculars, and I see this single light up there, and I still saw the single light with my naked eye. Then I whipped up the binoculars, and this single light resolved itself into a ring of lights, and I counted. I had a tape recorder going, and you could hear me counting the lights in the ring.
Sure.
There were 8 lights in a ring, and it lasted about 70 seconds, I think. Other people were getting videos, and I tried to have them have special devices that would allow for triangulation, and well, it was visible for about 70 seconds and then sort of faded out. Whether it went on the other side of the cloud or what, I don't know. When thinking about it afterwards, I realized a few things. Number one was the haze layer was at some altitude above the ground, 100 feet or something like that. And this object, if it was one thing, I assume it was one thing with framework with lights around the framework. The framework was either above or below the haze layer. If it was below the haze layer, you would see a dark shape as you looked up at the haze layer, because the light from the haze layer would be blocked wherever the structure was. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, if you couldn't see any structure at all, it could be that it was above the haze layer. The haze layer being sort of blocking the view of the structure. And as I thought about it, I couldn't see any structure. All I could see was the lights. The individual light dots of light would make it through the haze layer, and I could see that, even though I couldn't see the structure itself. So I concluded that this ring of lights, was 10 or 15, maybe 20 feet in diameter. That's getting pretty big for a hoax.
Oh, yeah.
With a hoax with flaming fireworks on it.
Well, I'm glad you had a sighting, Bruce, because so many people like yourself, who really apply science, like, guys like Stanton Friedman, he never had a sighting ever. And so it's very cool that you had a sighting, Bruce, and willing to talk about it.
Yep. Again, it's analyzing. The science comes in and comparing an assumed method of creating this as a hoax compared to how much you would have to do, how much work would you have to do to be able to make a hoax go over. In this particular case, like I said, I was looking. Well, I should say also I was looking for sound of a little engine. I never heard a thing. I could hear people whispering or talking, but I could never heard anything that sounded like a little engine. Even though this object was moving, it didn't have any obvious way of propulsion.
And nobody got footage of your sighting?
Oh, there was footage. There was several videotapes. There were 30 other people there when I was there. This was not the only night when they saw a ring of lights. It's the only night that I was there.
Yeah.
And
wow.
They had seen a ring of lights twice before I went there, and a couple of times after.
Huh. That's amazing, though, that you had a sighting and all. Your career has just been awe-inspiring. Everything that you've accomplished and researched and been a part of.
If you go to on the Untold Radio AM website, or probably Bruce's, if you look at his bio, it is insane.
It is like a highlight reel. I mean, most people would kill to have 10% of what you have in your bio, to be honest with you.
What's on the in my shortened listing of stuff there? It looks media, publications, and so on. There are three groupings of stuff, and they all end at the year 2000, which makes it look like I haven't been doing anything since then. Actually, if you go to the website and scan down the front page a little bit, you say right off the bat it says you can see my full resume, and there you find everything, which is the stuff having to do with work, real work, plus all the other things.
Very, very cool.
Well, I'm just honored you'd be willing to even come on. Bruce. I mean, you're a legend, and we didn't even, an hour and a half goes by like zing. We didn't even skim the surface.
Right, the legendary
on the astronauts.
Well, thank you for coming on, Bruce. I mean, really, unfortunately, we're out of time, and I'd like to thank you for coming on and just listening was just amazing what you had to say, and I know our audience would agree. But course, you have a website out there that people can go and visit, and that would be the website we've been talking about that you should run on over, and that, of course, would be Bruce Mac. Well, I'm gonna just spell it out because it's BRUMAC.mysite.com is where you can find Dr. Bruce Maccabee stuff.
Yeah,
I mean, it's all right here. I'm looking at it.
I put a link up on the
his
on
bio.
Radio website.
Cool. So you can spend hours there, folks, just reading what he's done.
Nothing fancy about the website.
Well, it gets the point across, and that's what matters. But Doug, we got to get out of here.
Yes, we do. Hey, everybody have a great Christmas.
Right? Have a Merry Christmas. We love each and every one of you guys, and our thoughts and prayers. Yes, absolutely. Thank you for coming on. Till next time, guys. Take care of each other, love each other, and Merry Christmas
to all.
Socks are the #1 most requested item in homeless shelters. Underwear is the second, shirts are third. At Bombas, socks were first, made with comfortable details for everyday wearing. Then underwear and shirts too, all designed to perfectly fit. At Bombas, every item you purchase means you're donating an essential clothing item to someone in need. One comfortable clothing item for you, one donated to someone in need. Bombas, comfort for all. Get 20% off your purchase at bombas.com/comfy.